Hello everyone, welcome back to Studyberry, where we talk about self-studying languages. Hope you enjoy the review and comment your thoughts down below. Now, I created a poll back on my Instagram, and you guys voted which textbook you wanted me to review next, and by far the most popular answer was Japanese from Zero. So basic facts about this book. This book, last time I checked, was about $30 on Amazon, about $25 used or on eBay. There are 13 lessons in this book, and by the end of this book, you will be able to read and write in hiragana and understand basic Japanese grammar points. Woohoo! So how did I use this book? I actually started with Genki, and I got a couple chapters in. In Genki, it's very academic, and it's definitely to be used in a classroom setting with a teacher and other students. I was very overwhelmed. There was too much information presented in each chapter for my liking, and about 3 chapters in, I quit. And I was looking into other resources, and this resource came up as a possible solution. So I want to talk about the positive points and maybe the not so positive points of this book, and maybe you can decide if this book is right for you. So let's get started with the positive points. I feel like a positive point of this book is that you can learn useful Japanese right away. So as an absolute beginner, there's not much that you can say, but right from the very beginning, the things that you learn, I feel like are in order of usefulness, and they build on top of each other, so they're presented in a very logical order, I think. I feel like Genki is more geared towards university learning, very academic, very wordy, lots and lots of graded questions. But this one is definitely geared toward the self-learner, and I feel like that's reflected in the way that the information is presented. So a lot of Japanese books, I would say like 99% of Japanese books, if you're learning Japanese, especially academically, they're separated between textbook and workbook and answer key and teacher's guide. It gets very expensive very quickly. But in here you have the textbook, the workbook, and the answer key all in one handy dandy book, which in my opinion is great. Not only is it inexpensive, but it just saves a lot of time and a lot of shelf space. Look how neat and tidy that is. Just one nice sturdy book. Good job, Japanese from Zero. Along with that self-study point, I feel like the information in here is presented in a way so it's not as overwhelming as other books. You're still learning a lot of the same grammar that you're learning in Genki, but the grammar is presented in a very simple way, and there are lots of examples and lots of practice. Let's go to the negatives, which may not be negatives, but some people might find negatives, so let's just get into the negatives. Everything is black and white. There's no colors. I don't really see this as a negative. I see it as a kind of in-between. I wish there were colors, but it also feels like a workbook, and like you can take notes and write your practice sentences and highlight all over the place and not feel like you're ruining a really nice textbook, you know what I mean? So a lot of people who have reviewed this book on Amazon, on YouTube, and other places on the internet, they find the approach to hiragana a little frustrating. Now, I will show you in the beginning of this book, there is no hiragana. But by the end of this book, it is all hiragana. So what happens between the beginning of this book and the end of this book? Well, in each chapter, they introduce 5 to 10 new hiragana and integrate them into the dialogues, into the practice sentences. So between the beginning and the end, you're learning hiragana along the way. You're learning it in context, and I find that very helpful. I could not remember hiragana with flashcards. I couldn't remember it enough to use the Genki book very well, but because this one introduced it slowly, incrementally, and in context, I was able to learn hiragana, and that really built my confidence. So some people are bothered by constantly reading a combination of hiragana and romaji, but that's a problem that's only in this book. 2, 3, and 4, and then 5 will come out soon. Don't have that problem, everything's in hiragana and kanji. This one might be a negative if you're trying to find an all-encompassing Japanese beginner book, is that because this is going from absolute beginner to mid-beginner, high beginner at the end of this book, is that it kind of lacks in the vocabulary department. So if you want to learn faster than what this book is teaching you, or learn in addition to what this book is teaching you, then you will need to go to outside resources to learn more vocabulary or to learn other things. So this is not an all-encompassing Japanese beginner book, but I think it does a really good job. Now you might be wondering, where can I get listening from for this book? There's no audio for this book. Ouch. Each lesson and the pre-lessons as well, they all have supplementary YouTube videos. So if you go on YouTube and you search Japanese from Zero, the channel will come up and there is a playlist for each book in this series. So some chapters have more videos than others depending on the difficulty or the complexity of what you're learning. And I feel like it's having a teacher helping you go through this book. So every time I would go through a lesson, I would watch all of the videos. Let's get into the flip through. So as you can see, here we have a table of contents. There's pre-lessons in addition to regular lessons, and each of them teach with a similar structure. So normally you start with grammar, new phrases, lesson activities, things like this. In the beginning of each chapter, you'll learn new lines of hiragana. By looking at the contents, you can see the kinds of things that you'll be learning. There are 13 chapters in this book. Learning possession, likes and dislikes, location, asking for things, lots of good stuff. There are also some really good appendices in the back as well, including an answer key. So let's go to the side. Those are the pre-lessons, those are the appendices. So in the middle, that's the chunk that you'll be learning. So it looks a little scary at first than it actually is. Let's go to chapter 5 and see what a chapter in this book generally looks like. Likes and dislikes. So something I like about this book is they have a before the lesson, things you need to know, goals for the current lesson, and extra notes from the teachers. Then you have your vocabulary words, both in the progressive with hiragana and romaji, and just kana and kanji. So right off the bat, you learn your new grammar points very simply with tons of example sentences. Look at all those example sentences. Woohoo! Then you have Q&A, so you go from English to Japanese, then Japanese to English, reading comprehension, practice your new hiragana with handwriting samples, lots of writing practice, new words with the hiragana you just learned, matching game, Q&A, more translation practice, more dialogues, more drills. Something that I like at the end of these chapters is they build on the same sentence. So in the end, you'll have this sentence building section. In the first lesson, you learn what is this? And then each lesson after that, you add the grammar and the vocabulary that you learned, and you can make a really long sentence even though you're just starting out in Japanese. So I really like that. I edited out the part where me speaking Japanese because my pronunciation is terrible. And then often in the back, they'll add extra vocabulary groups just so you can build up your vocabulary. They talked about likes and dislikes in this chapter, so a lot of people like sports and a lot of people like food. Same thing with chapter 6. The layout is basically the same. Tons of practice and tons of example sentences. Built-in workbook. All the way to the end. By the end, everything will be in hiragana, and so will everything in the rest of the books. Everything will be in hiragana.
The appendices are helpful. They have last names, common given names, answer key, and 3 glossaries you can look up in English, Romaji, or Hiragana. Look how helpful. I love it. Lots of answers because there's lots of practice. And in the back there's a really pretty map of Japan. How cool. And a Hiragana chart. And all the other books. So that's a wrap.
So that's everything for this Japanese from Zero review. It's kind of a quick review, and I hope you found it useful, and I hope you were able to use the flip through to gauge whether or not this is a resource that you'd be interested in using. If you have any questions about this book, or you have recommendations for future textbook reviews, then drop a comment down below and follow me on Instagram @StudyBerry. I hope you have a fantastic day and happy studying!